Good. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Worcester as we begin our Sunday morning worship service. If you haven't had a chance to sign in, I hope you will after the service so that we might be able to connect with you personally. During the service, we will have an offering that we will pass around, and we will do our joys and sorrows as we have normally done both here and online. We're joined this morning by those that are on Facebook Live. So welcome to all of you this morning. We begin our time together with our prelude, Lonesome Road, by James Taylor, played by our own music director, Matt Johnson. These words by Steve Stock. We light this chalice this morning to celebrate the inherent worth and dignity of every person, to reaffirm the historic pledge of liberal religion to seek the justice which transcends mere legality and moves towards the resolution of true equality, and to share that love which is ultimately beyond even our cherished reason, that love which unites us.
I were walking down the street, I heard you talk your line. You said, look at the rich chick, look at the fat chick. Hey, don't that hippie chick look fine? What is it in your background that makes you think that it's okay? Talk about the woman that you see in such a ruthless way. She's somebody's mother, she's somebody's daughter, somebody's lover. She's somebody's sister, and I'm saying, mister, what kind of brother are you? I haven't mentioned this before. I guess I was afraid to tell you how deeply offended I was at the comments that you made. I know that you think everything's a joke, even after all these years. You take the time to look behind that pretty smile, you would see the tears. She's somebody's mother, she's somebody's daughter, somebody's lover. She's somebody's sister, and I'm saying, mister, what kind of brother are you? I'm perfect. I'm not throwing stones your way, but I can't know what you say anymore, so my silence stops today. I know that you're a good man, so think about what you say and do. That could be your mother, sister, or lover being hurt by a good man like you. She's somebody's mother, she's somebody's daughter, somebody's lover. She's somebody's sister, and I'm saying, mister, what kind of brother are you? And she's your mother, she's your daughter, she's your lover, and she's your sister. So tell me, mister, what kind of brother are you? What kind of brother? Tell me now, what kind of brother? Yeah.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Worcester, our online and in-person Sunday morning worship service. We are glad that you've joined us here in our tent or online on Zoom. Today is another step back from our time in pandemic response as we move toward hybrid worship mode, meeting outside and online. We hope that this service gives you an opportunity to pause for a few minutes, to gather in community so that we might care for each other, take a moment to reflect on our own well-being, discover opportunities for spiritual refreshment and service in the wider world, even as we are at a personal distance. We will gather this way through the spring and summer months. Through the next few months, our religious exploration program will be offering opportunities for children and youth to meet outside. Please visit www.uucworcester.org for more information on these get-togethers as well as other opportunities to meet for discussion and support. For those of you who are joining us on Zoom this morning for safety purposes or so that we can come to know you better as you're able, please list your name on your video feed. Please note that this service is being live streamed on Facebook and is being recorded for future availability on the church YouTube channel as well as our website Worship Archive. Following the service this morning, you're invited to join us for a virtual fellowship hour online or to stay in this space for informal conversation. At noon, the 8th Principal Task Force will be offering a listening session for Black, Indigenous, people of color in the congregation to help them inform their work toward adopting. We'll join them this morning as well. Once again, welcome and thank you for joining us. Our opening words are those of Glenn Matthew. Feel that? Each breath, each inhale, exhale, we are living, breathing, connected. We are whole, complete, beautiful selves that we were born to be. Feel that in your bones, in your muscles, in your heart and your blood. That is the extraordinary you. The you who was born from this time, this place, this moment. Feel that? The struggle, the worry, the pain, the loss, the grief. It is still you. You are whole, complete, beautiful, extraordinary. Feel that? Please join in our opening hymn, found attached to your order of service, number 1021, Lean on Me. Rise in body or spirit. Times in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow. If we are invite Robin Mitskovich forward to share with us our religious exploration moment this morning, or Vicky Kopslanian to do that.
Standing in for Robin today. In our religious exploration program this morning, our children are going to continue to explore our seventh principle, respecting the interdependent web of life, of which we are all a part. So today they get to start planting in the raised beds that they've been preparing. So I invite all of the children and youth who want to participate to go that way, and the RE folks are ready to welcome you.
Following are words written by Mike Young as part of the book Don't Call Me Crazy, 33 Voices Start the Conversation About Mental Health, edited by Kelly Jensen. Mike Young writes, "There's nothing wrong with the fact that I limit how much time I spend in restaurants that quickly overwhelm me with loud acoustics. There's nothing wrong with never being interested in vapid small talk and always being interested in meaningful soul talk. There's nothing wrong with engaging in stymieing behaviors like cracking my shoulder. I know it gives some people the creeps, but come on, I'm not cracking anyone else's shoulder. There's nothing wrong with being the kid who skips out on playing Marco Polo in the swimming pool in favor of retreating to an unoccupied room and reading an Anne McCaffrey novel, as I often did at my cousin's house in the Hollywood Hills. It's very healing to have that realization, but of course it's not really as simple as saying, yo, there's nothing wrong with yours truly. After spending most of my life internalizing the idea that everything was wrong with me, I wasn't able to just flip a switch and go from I'm a piece of crap to I'm okay and up yours if you don't think I'm not. Memories are powerful. And my back file of overwhelmed and or humiliated moments is enormous. That cafeteria moment in fourth grade, the time when what felt like an entire locker room of seventh and eighth graders cornered and threatened me while the phys ed teacher sat and watched through the office window. The night in high school when my own brother asked me to stay in my room while his friends came over and then barked, "Get a social life," when I refused. That graduation party during college when I was so stricken by social anxiety that I sat unspeaking in a chair for an hour before I could make myself get up and leave. And on and on and on. Those memories have a permanent residency in my psyche. Most of them have satellite memories too, because unlike the characters I write about, I wasn't strong, resilient, or easily inclined to stand up for myself. Too many of these memories of mistreatment are accompanied by memories of how I just took the mistreatment and then went into psychic tailspin. It took me a very long time to teach myself how to cope with those memories and feelings in a healthy way. And until I did, my coping mechanisms were catastrophically unhealthy. I wasn't conscious of being autistic or how society treats autistic people, but I was very conscious of how overwhelming and disorienting it felt to be alive. A couple of years ago, I told a therapist, a pretty good one, about how chaotic and limitless the thoughts in my head have always felt. He tried to frame my perspective with a metaphor. Imagine our thoughts are individually contained in boxes with lids on them, and that most people can pick up which box they want to open, thereby releasing that thought. It's like all the boxes in your head are always open. I said, not really. It's more like all the boxes are open, launching themselves into the air and aggressively hurling their contents into my face over and over. I tried to mute the psychic onslaught through alcohol and drugs and escapist entertainment, because when I didn't, I mostly felt despair. Good times, #irony. When the world we've constructed as human beings is actively hostile to those of us who are autistic, good times can be hard to come by. The world has always felt like an alien landscape to me in some ways. And while I've learned to navigate it on neurotypical terms, the cost to my mental health has been higher than anyone should have to face. Autism is not a mental illness, but attempted compliance with non-autistic standards of behavior have played a central role in my lifelong battles with depression and anxiety. We come to that time in our service when we are offered an opportunity to share that which is symbolic of our own efforts, our own ideals, our own way in the world, that which is symbolic also of our hope for this congregation and its mission and ministries, an offering taken up so that we might continue to be able to gather in this manner and in so many other ways, to be with each other across so many of life's journeys, moments. So I invite those of you who would partake in our offering this morning to contribute as you would here in this place. And if you are online, I invite you to text your offering to 508-231-5335 or to visit www.uucworcester.org/donate. At this time, our morning offering will be received. Now we come to that time in our service where we're given pause to consider what is deepest in our hearts or most profoundly on our minds or in the work of our hands. In the days that have transpired or in the prospect of days to come, joys and sorrows that touch us deeply and are given another measure of meaning because of our capacity to share them in the midst of a company that claims us as a co-journeyer. So I invite those of you who have joys or sorrows this day to come forward to speak briefly in the microphone, telling us first who you are. Are there joys or sorrows to be shared this day?
Good morning. This is a great joy, and it is that the stewardship campaign has come to an end. We superhero support staff, which is David Showalter, Sherry Lynn, and myself, are very proud to announce that $193,000 has been committed from you, our members, toward next fiscal year. That is not the goal of $225,000 that we had set for ourselves, but it is a wonderful accomplishment. And for those of you who have made a pledge for next year, have increased, which many, many did, or have been able to maintain what you had pledged in the past, thank you. For those of you unable to commit a larger amount or even an amount this year, we thank you for your continued support and participation in this community. And superheroes are all among us. Let's not forget to recognize them every day.
Hi, I'm Bruce. It's my wife, Cheryl. My mom is almost 89 years old, and on Tuesday she went into the hospital. She's in kidney failure. We don't know, what's going to happen yet. They're working on it. She's scared. We're all a little scared. They don't really know what caused it, which is a big concern. So if you just keep her in your thoughts and prayers. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Wes Shepelek, and I have a couple of joys. First of all, I'm happy to be part of in-person services once again. And my girlfriend of 5 years and I are getting married on September 10th. So we're excited about that. And we're very happy that Patrick can be the one to marry us.
Hi, my name is Tamara. I grew up in this church, and today I got to bring my little family and introduce them to a community that is loving and welcoming, and now I'm getting emotional.
Hi, I'm Georgiana, and I just wanted to thank everyone for their cards and their calls from my mom, who passed away on February 5th. Her name was Teresa DeVries. She was 91 years old, and it was a pretty sudden death. But she had dementia, so we knew it was coming. But thank you, all of you who called me or sent cards. I'm so grateful.
Hi, I'm Laura. Bittersweet things. Today is my dad's 70th birthday. It's also the last birthday that I'm going to celebrate with him because his wife has decided that they're going to move to Colorado. So next weekend we're going to miss the church because she volunteered me to help with the yard sale. So if you like yard sales, let me know. But I'm seeing a lot of bittersweet things lately. A lot of, now that the world is opening up, I'm being told, bittersweet, how I should be a grandparent, how I could let my daughter have a baby. How could this, how could that? Why are you not vaccinated? You should be vaccinated by now. Instead of asking me why I can't be vaccinated right now. And as much as I'm so excited that the world is opening back up, I'm getting bombarded with everybody's opinions on how we should live our life and how I should be living my life, that I almost want to just go back in the house. And it's bittersweet. And I kind of wish I could just, pick and choose the people that I want to be around. So if I'm quiet this year, it's probably just because there's a lot of, things I'm being told what to do and not to do. And if I'm not vaccinated, who I can't be around, and instead ask me why I can't be vaccinated right now. So I am very happy that we are back here.
Hi, everyone. Evan Wilson. It is a joy to share that the congregation has been engaging in listening sessions and thinking about bringing the eighth principle to our congregation. which is a commitment to dismantle racism and other oppressions in our congregation and in our society. Aaron had mentioned that we have an in-person listening session today here at church for BIPOC individuals, and we're also holding one at 11:30 on Zoom. So this is not the end, this is the beginning of a process to be thinking, reflecting, learning. So it is a joy to be helping take part in that.
From Diane Mann. Yesterday, another woman and I helped a toddler who spoke no English who was wandering down Holden Street. We called the police and ultimately they found her home, which was about a block and a half away. May this toddler always find her way home. And Maddie Barnard says, I graduated college, exclamation.
From Karen. Have a memorial service for my husband today. He died over a year ago of COVID. Please hold us in your heart.
Service is so illuminating, it just takes flight on its own. Let us be in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Spirit of life, source of our inner and outermost being. We come with gratitude today for the presence of each other in our lives, for the opportunity to come together once again and to be present in ways we had only hoped for a few months ago, and to share with those who continue joining us from afar but are no less near in our hearts. Let's be mindful today of the gift of that presence, for our capacity to share and to be with each other and to nurture community into its own fullness through our gifts and our time, our creativity. Help us also to realize the community that we are becoming, to expand our reach and to find sources of inspiration in the stories of those that we have met and those we have yet to meet. Help us hold each other in moments of tender care when we worry about them, when illness pervades the peace of our lives. Help us be mindful of our judgments of each other. Help us to question and to listen more than to assume and pronounce. Help us be that which we are capable of becoming. In this moment, help us center and find peace in our hearts, in our minds, in this place. Amen. And blessed be. Please turn to your order of service to 10:12. Why not you pray? May it remain so. writer, poet, and physician Anish Lamishand writes these words. Don't call me crazy. I think I know I might be crazy. I could be burnt out or workaholic, sleepless, or a sleep monster, depressed or manic, unpolar, bipolar. Call me anything but crazy. I think I know I might be psycho. I could be antisocial or oversocial, alcoholic or drug addict, derealized or depersonalized, hallucinating or delusional. Call me anything but psycho. I think I know I might be nuts. I might be anorexic or bulimic, feeling the greatest or hopeless, fatigued or obsessively enthusiastic, cachetic or obese. Call me anything but nuts. I think I know I might be a lunatic. I might be suicidal or on-mind criminal, restless or unexpectedly energetic, ill or healthy, high on antidepressants or low on anoxacylics. Call me anything but a lunatic. I was in second grade when I was told at the end of the school year that I probably would take second grade again. I really didn't understand why. I knew that I was energetic. I knew that I had a hard time telling time. I knew that my reading probably wasn't up to the speed of some of the others, but I did comprehend what I read. I just didn't read all that fast. I could get antsy at times. I was ashamed to think that those of my friends that I knew so well were going to go ahead of me, and I was going to, quote unquote, be held back. My parents worked hard for a couple of months talking with the teacher and the school administration, only to discover that the same teacher I'd had in second grade was going to be hosting a second and third grade class the next year. And she welcomed the opportunity for me to be in that class and to join the third graders. It was in that class that year that I was diagnosed with Legg-Calvé-Perthes disease and spent most of the year in a sling to keep my foot off the ground, and then in a brace. By the time I was in fourth grade, I had been diagnosed with attention deficit disorder, although they didn't know that term at the time. I was just a hyper kid. I had a hard time reading, hard time paying attention, although I could pay attention to 10 different things at once. And I now went from a sling to a brace on my leg, and then from a brace to a body cast and an operation to reconnect my hip. When I was in sixth grade, after all of that was over, the guidance counselor came to the classroom one day and called out the names of a dozen of my best friends in order that they would go with him and they would choose the foreign language that they would take when they went to junior high the next year. And when my name wasn't called, I stood up in the back of the classroom and I said to my teacher, Miss Walls, why am I not part of that group? And my sixth grade teacher looked me in the eye in front of that class and said, well, you really don't think you're going to college, do you? I really want to find Miss Walls and show her my diplomas. It's kind of like that My Name is Sue song that Johnny Cash wrote. That was an energizer for me for the rest of my existence. When someone said, you can't, I said, watch me. So I'm a person who's grown up with attention deficit disorder, a leg disease. I have suffered most of my adult life from nicotine addiction. I have heart disease, and diabetes. And if I hadn't told you any of that, you probably wouldn't know. But I think it's important, if I'm going to speak about the normalcy of mental health and mental illness, that I share with you that I am not an aberration. And I will bet that 99% of us struggle with one form of that challenge or another. If not in ourselves, then in our close family systems. And we are touched by it. And so have I been. My mother, when I was in junior high, spent 2 weeks in the hospital, and I was told it was because she was having difficulty with her thyroid. Only years later did I discover that she had had a major depressive episode and was being treated for that in an inpatient unit in the hospital. I had wondered at that age why I couldn't see her, but it was all because my parents really did not want my brother and I to know just how much suffering my mother was going through at the time. And what was fascinating about that moment in my life was that my brother and I knew, instinctively knew, something was going on. And it made us feel like something was wrong in us for having that sense about my mother. My father was struggling with his own depressive episodes, and I think it was just too much for him to have to handle our questions and our concerns and our anxiety to come clean. But every family that I know that lives with those who are challenged by a variety of mental illnesses understands what that anxiety is, understands what it means to live with that kind of uncertainty. And in those rare cases where families are welcome the opportunity to talk about things openly, there is a sense of being able to share in the process of recovering health. In the absence of that, recovering health is something that is viewed by the family from afar and only surmised. And then there's that awkwardness of moving back into a sense of normalcy and wondering whether or not, in fact, what we had been intuiting really happened. Which is a long way for me to say to you, it's really, really important that we talk to each other about the things that affect us most, so that we can be with each other in ways that are healthful. And I want to talk this morning about some of those healthful ways of being in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month. And I specifically want to talk this morning about speech, which I'll get to in a moment. Those words by the doctor, words that describe the struggle of those who live with mental illness to fight the stigma that such diagnoses often carry. This is the reality that most who face other illnesses almost never have to face. No one with a heart condition, no one hears a derogatory response to the claim that they live with heart disease. Nor do those of us who manage a diagnosis of diabetes suffer the condemnation of others when we talk about managing our glucose levels. Why then is it acceptable that when we single out those who live with depression or anxiety or bipolar conditions or schizophrenia or obsessive compulsive tendencies or any other condition that finds its origin in the brain? Why is it okay for us to marginalize them and to claim that they are that disease? So don't call me crazy because conflating, I want you to hear the words of Mike Young again, who we heard earlier. He says, don't call me crazy because conflating autism with insanity is factually wrong. Don't call me a burden, a tragedy, or an inspiration either. Don't call me a liar. I'm not making any of this up, and I've spent most of my life trying to figure myself out, which I guarantee is longer than you spent trying to figure me out. Do not under any circumstance call me curable, because autism isn't a disease that is in need of a cure. It is an essential and inextricable part of who I am as a human being. If someone believes impossibly that curing me of autism is desirable, that person also believes that my existence as a person I truly am is not desirable. You understand how that might make someone want to start flipping tables, right? There are plenty of other things you are welcome to call me, though. Call me a husband and a father. Call me someone who tries to be a good friend. Call me a children's author and a future librarian. Call me disabled. Call me neurodivergent. Call me human. I am, you know. I may be different in some ways from non-autistic people, but I am different in some ways from every other autistic person too. And whatever those differences may be, I'm 100% human. Call me autistic. Don't call me Mikey, though. I hate that. What I know is that when we marginalize those who live with a host of mental challenges, the words we use say more about the speaker than they do about those for whom the speech is directed. I was thinking about this the other night as I sat in my living room with my wife. We were talking about some character on some sitcom program. And I remember saying to her, he's certifiable, right? What a nutcase. He's three cards short of a full deck. Those are phrases that I would never, ever utter in the physical presence of such character. Why did I think it was okay for me to utter them to my wife? I began to ask myself this. What was I really expressing? Fundamentally, I was expressing fear and anxiety, which was what the television sought to provoke in me. So very often we are conned into believing that what we experience through the media, that mental illness is a danger, that we ought to fear those who are neuroatypical or neurodivergent. It was only recently that we began to experience the creative capacity of those who live with mental challenges as normative. Doctors with autism, brilliant mathematicians with schizophrenia, heroes living with bipolar disorder. The presence of such brilliance and creativity is not new, however, just unnoticed and uncelebrated. Think about this. Billy Joel, who lives with alcoholism and depression. Craig Ferguson, who lives with alcoholism. Karen Carpenter, who lived with anorexia nervosa. Sandra Dee, who lived with anorexia nervosa. Tracy Kidd also. Richard Simmons. Kurt Cobain, who lived with attention deficit disorder and bipolar depression. Michael Phelps, who lives with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Doug Flutie, who lives with autism. These are just some of the 300 people who have reached a certain level of fame in our culture and that the National Alliance on Mental Illness lists as living with mental illness. Why don't we know more about folks that live with mental illness, or for that matter, any other illness? Heidi Helig notes, illness in general has a long history of being attributed to a flaw in the sick person's character or a punishment for their sins. And the media surrounding illness doesn't help. So often the villain is called crazy, or a crazy person is deemed a villain. Those of us who don't give our all for a cure, or more accurately for control of our crazy, are seen as moral failures, too lazy to do the right thing. But it is not about moral failure. It is about physical challenge. And it is an opportunity for us to experience the world differently if we would just learn to be present with each other without judgment. I teach a course in the Sociology of Death and Dying, which just finished. My grades were handed in on Friday. And one of the things that I talk about is the language that we use related to things like suicide Suicide, by the way, I describe as a homicide where the victim and the perpetrator are the same person, which helps those who are studying suicide for the first time understand the spectrum of emotions that can be present in those who have survived the suicide of another human being. What I also talk to them about is the language that we use around suicide. So often we have been encultured to talk about someone who committed suicide. Right? I want you to think about what the origin of the word committed is, where it comes from, and the difference between using the phrase committed suicide and completed suicide. Committed actually comes from the moral frame in society where suicide was illegal and sin. We commit sins, we commit crimes. Right? In order to be able to fight the stigma, it is as simple as us choosing very previously hitherto innocuous words to help us begin to enculture and reframe the reality that people face, right? Someone is not schizophrenic. Someone lives with schizophrenia. We are not our diseases. If you don't remember anything else from this morning, remember that. And any time that we approach each other in a way that demoralizes, diminishes, marginalizes us because of our own misunderstanding, and we misrepresent a human being for any of the processes, challenges, diseases, or traits that they exhibit, we are doing a disservice to humanity, which is ultimately what we must learn not to do. By way of expressing this in a religious context, I want you to think about this within the context of the Buddhist notion of right speech. Part of the eightfold path of Buddhism that was taught by the Buddha. Along with right view, right motivation, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And I want us to be careful that even within Buddhism, there is discussion about language. So for many modern Buddhists, the issue of right and wrong misses the point. So instead of right speech, they talk about intentional speech, which means mindful speech. It means being present before one speaks, before one does things. I want you to think about this in terms of our media culture right now. How many of you have your cell phone on you? Right? And you get a text message. You know, it wasn't that long ago where you could wait 24, 48, or 72 hours to get a phone call back from somebody, right? Now, if you ring someone and you leave a voicemail, you hope to get a message back within an hour or so. But if you text someone and you don't ultimately reply within the first 3 minutes, you feel like you're being ignored. But that is the way in which those who develop this technology want us to feel. And it ultimately causes a great deal of challenge, right? Because we do not often think before we text. We do not often pause or write texts and set them aside and send them later. I'm mindful of this because I have a colleague who I used to work with, who was a very dear friend, still is a very dear friend of mine, Episcopalian minister, working for a local hospital in West Virginia when I was across the river in Marietta, Ohio. He was the head chaplain in the hospital system, and he tells the story about how the hospital administrator had sent this email that just totally torqued him and a number of other lead folk in the hospital, and without even realizing it, he essentially took to the keyboard and immediately wrote a response, right? And sent it. Now, I want to say to you, don't do this, right? Whatever response you have when you're torqued ought to sit in your computer at least 24 hours so that you can read it again. But that's not what he did. And to the CEO's credit, he responded within moments. Feel better? In that instance, the CEO had more mindfulness than my colleague who was teaching mindfulness, who understood that we as human beings sometimes make mistakes, and he was willing to show more grace than the chaplain, because he understood that that's what happens when we're confronted with things that jar us. So when we speak of right speech and we speak of intentional speech, what we're really talking about is being mindful of how it is that we are attending to somebody and how we are relating to them in a way that brings about peacefulness, brings about mindfulness, brings about an end to suffering. And the Buddha tells of one such experience where this occurs. It's the story of Patakara. Anyone know the story of Patakara and the Buddha? It's not well known in many circles, right? But Patakara, it is written, was the daughter of a very wealthy merchant in Sabayati. When she came of age, her parents arranged her marriage with a groom of equal social standing, but Patakara refused to marry him and instead eloped with one of their servants who she loved. They both went to a far-off village and led a life of hard work. She became pregnant and she asked her husband to take her to her parents' home as she needed their care during her pregnancy. However, her husband feared that they would torture or imprison him and hence refused to take her. So she left alone for her parents' home and the husband followed, trying to persuade her to turn back. And during the journey itself, birth pangs started and she delivered a boy. Finding no reason to continue to her parents' home now, they returned to their home. Later, she became pregnant with her second child and the same sequence of events unfolded. And she took along her elder son too this time, and the husband followed, trying to convince them to turn back. This time a storm came up quite unexpectedly and it started raining heavily. Her husband started chopping some wood to make a shelter for her, and as she was in labor. However, while doing so, he was bitten by a poisonous snake and died instantly. Meanwhile, she had given birth to another boy, but once she came to know of her husband's death, she was inconsolable in grief. Pulling herself up, she continued toward her parents' town. Now they had to cross a river which was swelling, and as she felt very weak, she decided that she would escort her child across the river one by one. Leaving her elder son behind, she first carried the younger one to the other bank. However, while she was returning for her elder son, she saw an eagle swoop down on her newborn and take him away. She started yelling in sorrow, seeing which the elder son thought she was beckoning him to come near her, and he entered the water and was swept away in the current. Devastated, she continued on her way. As she was about to reach her town, a person from the town met her and told her that her parental home had collapsed due to heavy rains, leading to the death of her parents and her brother. On hearing this, her reason left her, says the story. She tore her clothes and wandered aimlessly and naked in the town. People pelted her with stones. Then the Buddha came to the town where he used to deliver sermons in their monastery, and Patakara went there. The Buddha's disciples tried to stop her and send her away, but Buddha instructed them to allow her to come to him. As she approached him, she regained her right mind. She became aware of being naked and crouched on the ground in shame. A cloak was provided, and then she prostrated at the feet of the Buddha and recounted her tragic life experience to him. The Buddha listened to her, listened to her with compassion, and made it clear to her the impermanence of the painful experiences she had undergone. At that moment, she could grasp this impermanence of things and attained liberation. She proclaimed, "Having washed my feet, I watched that water, noticing the foot water flowing from high to low. With that, the mind was calmed, just as a noble thoroughbred horse." By observing the various rates at which the water trickled, it dawned upon her that some people live for a short period of time, like her children, some for a medium length of time, like her husband, and others for a long time, like her parents. It became an epiphany to her. She attained total detachment. Buddha made her one of his foremost disciples. She became the embodiment of self-discipline and compassion and helped many troubled souls who came to the monastery seeking solace. One commentator notes it's worth epitomizing the attitude of the Buddha to the person deeply disturbed in thought and behavior. She was continued to be called in the Pali language shameless and naked, reminding society that the past psychiatric patient can resume normal duties of a person and even assume the leadership of their particular order. The Buddha designated her as the discipled one, the keeper of Vinya. She is treated with great reverence in the Buddhist canon, indicating that mental illness is not an anathema to be worried about, feared, or misinterpreted as possession. The condition could be understood and normally restored. What this particular story, I think, means for us is the question, wherein comes the healing? Wherein comes the deepest part of the understanding? I believe that it is facilitated initially by the experience of being heard instead of being judged. I think it comes in those moments when we are with people who can listen beyond our words or our emotions and be able to tap into who we are in that moment and how we are being in that moment and love us even more, despite our capacity to love ourselves in those moments most of the time, who come closer to us when we are angry or sad, who do not find themselves distancing because of their own fear of involvement, but learning how to be. I've told this story before. I remember my brother, who lived in Ithaca, New York many years ago, relating the experience of going across the street and seeing a group of people that were surrounding an older man who had fallen getting up across the curb and was on the ground, and there was this entire group of people around him that were standing at a distance, and they were saying to him, "Stay there, don't move, we're going to find someone to help you, don't worry, just," but they were all out here. He said he watched as one of the Tibetan monks who lived in the monastery in town walked right through the crowd, reached down, spoke to the man for a moment, helped him to his feet, walked him over to a bench at the corner, sat him down, and began to tear his golden robes into things that could help to bind his knee and his leg that were cut. And he said, in that moment, I had this awareness of the difference between kind of the litigious culture that we're in that says, don't go near people for fear that it's going to come back on you, and the religious teaching of what true compassion is, which is you dive in. It isn't about you. It's about them. And I grieve the opportunities that I had over my life to do this with people who are challenged in a variety of ways by mental illness or mental health issues. I grieve the missed opportunities to sit with people who may have wanted to share something deep about themselves, but were too fearful because they assumed judgment. I grieve the fact that my mother was never able to express what was happening to her in a way that allowed my brother and I to understand the normalcy of those kinds of mental health challenges. And I grieve the fact that my father did not feel like we were strong enough to be able to accompany him through that in the moment, although I understand with love in my heart that he was trying to shield us from a reality that I think was overwhelming to him. By way of this community, I want us to pay attention to each other in ways that are respectful and ways that allow us to tell our stories uninhibited by the fear that somehow we're going to out ourselves. To find those people that can companion us in the ways of our own choosing. And to feel comfortable in this place being who we are, not who the world claims we ought to be. I say this because we're all touched by mental health issues. We all have things in our family histories or within ourselves that we are quiet about. And it's okay to be quiet about them. But if you want to share, know that I'm here. And there are so many others. And I am so grateful for the courage that many have had here to be able to tell their story so that we might understand, appreciate, and learn. Let us continue that path. Amen. And blessed be. Would you please join together in our litany this morning, which is the congregational phrase that you all are going to share is, may we reach out in love and honesty.
In the spirit of love, harmony, and remembrance, we stand too often divided, too often set apart from one another in heedless ways. We seek to be compassionate, but our vision may be clouded or distracted. We too often go forward day by day and look without seeing.
May
we reach out in honesty and love.
May we work to heal the divisions which separates Earth's children one from another. May we peer through the mists of deception which hide and deny violence, mists enclosing those who suffer. May we not only allow the misuse of our fellow souls to hide in broad daylight.
May we reach out in honesty and love. When we see the afflicted, however they may be afflicted, may we not shrink away. May we not blame suffering on the one who suffers. May we be courageous enough to perceive suffering and compassionate enough to attend to the voices of those who suffer. May we reach out in honesty and love.
When we see prejudice, when we hear evil speaking, when we witness the rough hand or the scathing word laid upon the helpless or innocent, may we resolve to work toward unity and justice.
May we reach out in honesty and love. May we not turn away from the wounded head of the abused. May we not accept the twisted reasoning by which the oppressor declares himself the victim.
May we reach out in
honesty and love.
Let our gratitude for good fortune in our lives lead us not to complacency, but to awareness. awareness of those whose lives are shadowed by abuse and neglect. May we not ignore signs of deficit or denial that hide brutality.
May we reach out in honesty and love. In all things, may those who suffer ever be able to approach us, find a kindly ear and supporting hand. May we witness for love and justice at every level of relationship. May we nurture a keen eye and a strong and loving heart for any who fear the hurtful rod, the cutting voice, the uneven hand, the chain of oppression, great or small. May we reach out in honesty and love.
Would you please join together in our closing hymn, number 1057, attached to your order of service? Please rise in body or in spirit. Once again, beloved, worship in this place has come to an end, but our service continues. Next with an opportunity for conversation and fellowship. May yours be a wondrous and wonderful week. Thank you for being here. I hope we will see you again very, very soon.